Vargas, and I'm the Director of Outreach Programs for Peer Support Community Partners. And this is Grief in the Wake, conversations about loss to suicide and substance-related causes, a video series where we touch on topics related to losing a loved one to suicide or substance-related causes and the grief experience that follows. Today's topic is on the question that many find themselves asking in these situations: could this death have been prevented?
Yeah, and this is such a common question. My name is Joanna. I'm the Director of Safety, Hope, and Healing Counseling and Consulting. And I so often work with loss survivors who talk about different ways that they wonder if this could have been prevented. And this comes up with almost any kind of death, certainly any kind of sudden or unexpected death. And we hear people thinking about all sorts of things. What could they have done differently? What could others have done differently? Sometimes it leads to a lot of anger and guilt and blame, and sometimes recrimination. It can cause real problems and conflicts in relationships. And it's real. It's a real question that people wrestle with. And so it's really important to think about what are the reasons why we think through what could have prevented this, what is coming up that leads people to replay these questions over and over and over again, and to really understand what choices people have, what can people do about it. And we know that there are some things that are similar to the why did this death happen question that people often talk about, but that are also a little bit different because it's this very specific, like, regret. What if I had come home a couple minutes earlier? What if he had never bought a gun? What if, right, the other driver, right, with any kind of death? And that some of those what ifs really are impacted by the type of loss with a suicide and overdose death.
Yeah. And this comes up in really unique ways when it comes to grieving deaths to suicide and substance related causes, as Joanna mentioned. For many people, they have spent a long time struggling with their loved one's mental health or with their loved one's substance use or both. And some people may have been imagining this type of outcome, may have been expecting it in some ways. And so they wonder, what could we have done to change this? If we had tried this, would this have been differently? And really trying to make sense out of something and find answers where sometimes there aren't answers. Other people, on the other hand, they may not have expected this whatsoever. This might have been completely out of the blue, and yet they're still asking the same questions. How could this have been prevented? What did I miss? What could I have seen or done differently? And these questions can take them down a rabbit hole that we often call the what ifs, the shoulda, coulda, woulda, questions about one's ability to have stopped this death, to have prevented this death. And this can really be impactful in people's grief experience, kind of continuing to go in circles with those questions. And when that happens, this can lead survivors down a long path of trying to dissect everything, trying to replay every memory, trying to understand systems, trying to see if anyone or anything can be held accountable for their loved one's death. And again, really kind of just focusing their energy, focusing their grief on trying to get these answers that may not be out there.
It's such an important point. And I think we see this so often with people really struggling with, especially in situations where if they had prevented it in the past, right? If they had been able to reverse an overdose or had been able to interrupt a suicide attempt, that they wonder, why couldn't I this time? Or what if there had just been Narcan on hand? Or what if I had gotten home 5 minutes earlier, right? Those kinds of questions. And so one of the things that we really recommend to people is just to know that this is normal. This is a part of grieving these types of losses, and to really understand that people need to go through this. They need to really be able to wrestle with some of these questions about could it have been prevented? But then to also acknowledge that there are times where replaying these questions over and over again could do harm, right? It could do harm if there is so much anger towards other people or other systems that makes it hard for you to remember who the person was, right? And how they lived, not just think about whether their death could have been prevented or how they died. We often talk about creating that bearable narrative of the death as being one of the early tasks of grieving these types of losses. We're going to talk about that more in the series, but I think really thinking about how do you create that narrative? How do you start to understand it in some way that is bearable for you? Consider if there are safe people or places where you can share some of these thoughts or stories, and consider if there are times where you should put them aside, right? And that's not to say shove them down, right? If they're coming up, there's reasons why they're coming up, but really trying to remind yourself that maybe this isn't the way that you want to remember your person always. And so sometimes we talk about replacing that thought or that memory with something that is what you'd really rather focus on.
Absolutely. We thank you for watching this video series. Just a reminder that there are lots of resources out there, from peer grief support to professional grief support. There are websites, books, podcasts, all sorts of things. And it's just a matter of trying different things and seeing what helps you in your grief journey, because it's such an individual experience. But if there are other topics that you want to hear us cover, feel free to let us know. We want to make sure that this is as helpful as possible for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.